Forest friends, today we're going to travel to the continent of Australia. So I want to start by showing you our world map. So here's the world map, and remember these are all the continents we've learned so far. North America, that's where we live. South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and then down here, Australia. And you're going to find that Australia is the smallest of the 7 continents. Here's a big map of Australia. And Australia itself, at least the mainland, is not just one continent, but it's one country. Now, sometimes Australia is also called Oceania because there's lots of islands around the Australian mainland that are considered part of the continent and not part of the country of Australia. And you'll see some of those when we start taking a look at the cards, okay? So one of the places that you probably have heard of before is Sydney, Australia, which is where the movie Finding Nemo takes place. And Sydney is right here. And let's go ahead and read our book about Australia. Here it is, Australia by Rebecca Hirsch. Here's that table of contents again that shows us what page we should go to if we want to look for specific information. Welcome to Australia. Australia is the world's smallest continent. It is both a continent and a country. Here are people hiking in the Uluru National Park. People of Australia. Most people in Australia live in big cities. Some ride a monorail to get from place to place. So this is in Sydney, Australia, and you may have ridden a monorail at Disneyland, but in Sydney, Australia, there is a real monorail that people use for transportation. Some people in Australia live in the country on farms and ranches. So here's a picture of a sheep ranch in Australia. Australia's first people are called Aborigines. They have many traditions from long ago. So here's Aboriginal children learning special dances from the grown-ups. And you can see they're wearing special makeup and special outfits. And those would not be outfits that Aboriginal children would wear every day. They're just wearing them for a special ceremony or a special occasion. Amazing animals. Australia has unusual animals. Kangaroos hop very fast to go from place to place. And here's a mother kangaroo carrying a baby kangaroo in her pouch. That's called a joey. So Australia is home to a special category of animals called marsupials. And marsupials are mammals, so they drink milk from their mothers. But when they are born, they're teeny tiny and not able to live outside of their mother's pouch. So they crawl into their mother's pouch and continue to develop there. And that's what makes marsupials special, and they only live, really, for the most part, in Australia. There are a few kinds of marsupials elsewhere, but most live in Australia. Koalas live in trees. They eat the leaves. They sleep most of the time. In fact, the word koala means no drink. Koalas get most of their water from their food. And the kind of trees they like to eat are eucalyptus trees. So they get their water from eucalyptus leaves. And koalas are also marsupials. They have pouches for their babies too. Land and water. The center of Australia is dry and is called the outback. The outback is hot during the day and cold at night. So here's a picture of the outback in Australia. You can see that the dirt is very red colored. Uluru Rock is in the outback. It is the world's largest rock. So this is Uluru Rock. And it is one rock, not a whole bunch of little ones stuck together, but one giant rock. It used to be called Ayers Rock, but the Aboriginal people always called it Uluru Rock, and so the official name was changed back to the Aboriginal name. Australia has forests with tall trees and many plants. Some are found nowhere else in the world. So here's eucalyptus trees growing in Australia. Now, if you remember from when we did the tree science back in the fall, we have eucalyptus trees here in the United States, here in Livermore, as a matter of fact. They are not native to this area, meaning they didn't grow here naturally. They were actually brought here from Australia. Now, Australia is home to the Great Barrier Reef. It is the world's biggest coral reef. Beautiful coral and many kinds of fish live in the Great Barrier Reef. So these corals look like they're plants, right? That one looks like cauliflower, but coral is actually an animal. And then lots of different fish and other kinds of sea life live in the Great Barrier Reef. And the Great Barrier Reef is a coral reef. We'll see some other pictures of the Great Barrier Reef from above, like if we were flying over it with a plane when we do the cards. Rain falls in Australia's low mountains. It creates waterfalls. The water flows to the oceans that surround this tiny continent, and this is the Barron Falls in Australia. Modern marvels. This is a really, really famous building, and in fact, I think when we were first starting our continent study, that was one of the buildings you could have built with blocks. So this is the Sydney Opera House in Australia, and it's the most famous building in Australia. Its roof is made of curved shapes. Each roof section weighs up to 15 tons. That's as big as 2 male elephants. So it's really iconic and beautiful and big. Meet a platypus. Platypuses live in lakes, swamps, and rivers in Australia. They have a bill like a duck, and they have webbed feet like a duck, but they are mammals. They have fur, and they lay eggs. Weird, huh? So the way we know that they're mammals is because they do give milk to their babies, but they lay eggs. Most mammals give birth to live young. Platypus is definitely an exception. Okay, I want to show you some animals that live in Australia, and I know you're going to know some of these. So my first one is a kangaroo, and you can see this kangaroo has no joey. So there's a kangaroo. There are other animals that live in Australia that look like kangaroos but are smaller. Those are wallabies. And then ones that are kind of in between size, those are wallaroos. How about this one? Looks like a fox or a dog, huh? That is called a dingo. This is the wild dog of Australia, a dingo. Okay. This is a horned lizard that lives in Australia. If we put it next to the dingo, it looks like it's as big as a dingo, but really these are not as big as a dingo. Here's that koala. And people sometimes call them koala bears, but they're not bears. They're marsupials. And then my last one is the platypus, the duck-billed platypus. And I think I have in the cards, which I'll show you next, a picture of a platypus. Okay, so there we go. Okay, I want to start out by showing you some animals. So here's a picture of a real dingo. You can see it looks a lot like a fox or a coyote. Here's a real koala. A kangaroo, and I made sure I got a picture of one with a joey. Can you see the joey in there? And then here, I do have it, the platypus. I think when I was in middle school, I wrote a report on platypuses because I thought they were so interesting. Okay, some typical food from Australia. This is a meat pie. We have meat pies here too. These are lamingtons, and I've never had a lamington, but it's something that's sweet. Looks like it's a cake with kind of a frosting and maybe sugar on top. This is pavlova, and I have had pavlova. When I was first teaching, I had a student who was from Australia, and she made a pavlova for us. It's meringue, which is egg whites that are whipped up. That's this part. And then it's hard to see because it's also white, but on top of the meringue is whipped cream, and then you put fruit on it. It's named after Anna Pavlova, who was a famous ballet dancer. She came to Australia, and then this dessert was created in her honor. Kind of interesting. Vegemite. So people in Australia like to eat Vegemite on their bread, like we might like to eat peanut butter. Now, they think peanut butter sounds pretty gross, and I'm not sure Vegemite looks too delicious to me, but it might be. I've never tried it. It's kind of a malty, yeasty sort of taste, from what I understand. All right, now I'm going to show you some famous places. Here's Uluru, or Ayers Rock. You can see how big it is. Here's a picture of the Sydney Opera House again, from a different angle this time, from the side. It looks like sailboats, maybe. All right, here's that Great Barrier Reef. This is what it would look like if we were looking on top of it. So the picture that we saw in the book would be if we were looking under the water. All right, here's Bondi Beach, probably the biggest and most famous beach in Australia. Okay, some homes, and here's where we're going to see some of the other countries that are in Australia/Oceania. This is a home in New Zealand. New Zealand is an island country near Australia. Looks like a country home here in the United States. Here's a home in Papua New Guinea, another island nation. Very different from our homes. Here's a home in Samoa. Again, pretty different from our homes. And then this is a home in Australia, and you can see that looks pretty similar to our homes. Okay, pictures of people. Here are children in Australia, and these are Aboriginal children. Here's a picture of school children in New Zealand, and you can see they're all wearing uniforms. Here's a picture of a mom and a child in Papua New Guinea. And you can see it probably is pretty warm there from what the clothes they're wearing. And then here's a couple of children in Australia playing together. Looks like they had their face painted and they're making faces. All right, clothing. This is a family in Tonga, another island country. And you can see they have colorful outfits. Looks like they're dressed up for a special occasion here. This is a picture of clothing in New Zealand, very similar to the clothing we have here in America. Clothing in Papua New Guinea. And then a family in Australia. Again, very similar to ours. You can tell by all of the clothing that it's pretty warm in Australia. Okay, here's the Australian flag. Australia used to belong to the United Kingdom or England, and so you can see the Union Jack, the British flag, is part of the flag itself, as well as the Big Dipper. Here's the flag of New Zealand, very similar. The flag of Fiji. The flag of Tonga, a little bit different. Papua New Guinea has a bird on it. Micronesia. Samoa. And the flag of the Solomon Islands. Okay, so today for your passport, you're going to want to put the purple stamp into your passport, and you can see I did a picture of Uluru Rock, or Ayers Rock, from Australia. Hope you enjoyed your trip to Australia, friends. See you later.